part of it. And most of all, we want you to practice, practice, practice in what you'd like to take to the fair. So the first thing we're going to do is tell you about presentation. Okay, if you want to take a basket to the fair, we want to show you how to do presentation in that. If you want to take cookies to the fair, we want to show you how to prepare your cookies. If you want to take muffins to the fair, we're going to tell you the do's and the don'ts of muffins. So first of all, we're going to start on cookies. Does that sound good?
That sounds great. And then we'll make sure we get seen by the camera, because we want to make sure that you see this, because this is, like Sue said, it's all about presentation. So feel free, if you've got any questions at any time, put those in the chat. Ami will holler those out for us. And I also want to give huge props to Kathy O'Rourke, who made all of these items. So thank you, Miss Kathy. Yay. So yeah, so if I am a first-time foodie who's entering a food product into the fair, Sue, what do I need to know? How do I even package it?
Okay, first of all, I'd like to tell you that if you're a first-year 4-H'er, first year everything, don't get unhappy with anything. At least go 3 years before you make the decision to get out of 4-H. That's what I tell everybody. But anyway, the very first thing you want to do when you package your foods for the fair is to get a plate and have the plate. This is going to hold some cookies, and then we're going to put the cookies in a bag, and then we're also going to put the fair label on entry tag on top, and don't forget on the bottom also goes your name and entry. So, and then the product will go in the bag, and then it will be packaged correctly for the judge at the fair, like that.
Very good. And I do want to say, this is one thing, as the products come into the fair, before they get seen by the judges, we want to make sure that everything is in compliance. And this is one of the things that I see all the time, is that just when things are missing. So like, don't forget your entry tag, and then also your recipe. You want to make sure that your recipe is attached to the back of your entry tag. And then Miss Ami, where can they get these entry tags?
Yeah, so the entry tags needs to be printed by the 4-H family before they come to the fairgrounds with their item. You will be entering your exhibits online in June. The entry system opens up mid-June, so look out for an email from the extension office, and we'll communicate that as many times as possible.
Very good. All right, so entry tag, recipe on the back of the entry tag, and then also this little label will go on the bottom of whatever dish is holding your product. So maybe it's a glass dish for pies, or like Sue said, a paper plate for cookies. And then you want to, and then those are also on the website that need to be printed.
Oh, it is, yes.
Very good. All right. Now recipe, you can print that yourself. And we also accept boxed items for foods entry. So if you're using a boxed item, usually those recipes are on the back of the box. What you can do is just cut that recipe portion out of that box, tape it, glue it, staple it onto the back of the entry tag, and you're good to go. So got my entry tag, it's on my bag, got my label, it's on my plate, and my product is in the bag.
Perfect.
Very good.
Ready to go to the judge.
All right. So if I'm making cookies, Sue, what do I need to do to have like the best cookie food entry for the fair?
Okay. The best thing you have to do is to have everything uniform. I'm going to grab these. And you need to choose a recipe that works for you. And so we want a cookie. We're going to use your 5 senses, and you want everything uniform. Uh-oh, what happened to this one? Maybe something happened to that. We don't want a product like this to come to the judge, okay? So, but anyway, when that judge looks at these cookies, this is going to be kind of a negative. But these, she's going to look at these and say, they're nice and brown on the bottom, and the cookie or the chocolate chips are evenly distributed. And so she might like everything else, and she'll taste it and say yes or no, and you'll get a ribbon. And I'm thinking we've got some cookies here that are really the nice cookies. Now these are even all the way around. And one way you can do that is to have a cookie scoop. And I like the small ones. And then that way it just gives you a nice small cookie. Any questions on that?
So it's not a question about cookies, but I did get a question from the viewers asking if pies should be baked in glass or aluminum pans. Are you going to talk about that later, or?
We can move on to pies now. But if anyone's got questions about anything we've talked about in the past, no worries. We'll pick back up and keep going. But yeah, so pies, very popular food and treat item. And that one is in a glass container rather than a foil. So do you think that's probably preferred? Susan?
Yes, glass is always preferred with pies. And if you don't want to pay a lot of money for a glass container, go garage sailing and you're going to find tons. And so, but this is an apple pie that has been baked. And this person baked it this morning, and she did like a wash, which I think is a good presentation. She did very well around her crust, which is another good presentation. And the apples are equal in size, which is a good presentation. The judge is going to look at the bottom to see if it's darker or like too dark, but this one looks like it's just perfect.
And we do have a question about how do we cover the pies with plastic wrap? And would we get our glass dish, pie dish back after judging?
Yes, this is why we want you, okay, about the pie dish, we want you to go ahead and buy a pie dish that is no,
It's not
your
special.
relatives.
It's not special.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So anyway, like I say, get one that you don't have to have back, but we don't know what's going to happen this year at fair, so you might get it back. So we don't really know. And so the judge is going to cut it, and she's going to, or he will just check to see what it looks like, if it's going to fall apart or whatever, and to see if the crust is done on the bottom. And it's another thing is if your crust is too thick, it's not going to be done. I did that once.
I do that all the time.
So any questions about
So
this?
they asked about covering, and you could see we had a little issue kind of getting it out of the bag.
Yes.
The judge, I mean, it will take notice of that, but you do want to try and preserve your beautiful edge as much
Right.
as you possibly can. So finding kind of a cover that will fit around it. But what about like plastic wrap or cling wrap or foil? What is probably best to cover?
Okay, one thing that I did and we've done in the past is go down to the cleaners and ask them for a big bag, and then just blow it up and then tie it, and then you'll come in with a air inflated bag over your pie, and it won't crush your beautiful presentation.
And to blow it up rather than just kind of putting it to your mouth and blowing it up. We don't want that. So one way you could do is take the bag and just bring it up and then bring it down and over your pie.
Very
And
good.
that will have that air in there. Pretty good. One more question. You mentioned wash.
Yes.
So there are a lot of washes out there. You can do like a water wash, milk wash, egg wash. Is one kind of better than the other?
Or milk is even good. I think sometimes whatever gives it the best browning that doesn't make it look, just kind of like a white crust. And so I would use probably water or not egg, probably. We're kind of, although the heat of the oven would go ahead and take care of that bacteria, but I think probably milk or water.
Okay, very good. But a wash definitely recommended.
Yes.
Okay,
If
very
you
good.
want pretty.
and it is all about presentation. You want to have your best items brought to the fair. All right. Any other questions, Ms. Naomi?
We are good to continue.
All right, fantastic. All right, so moving right along, let's talk muffins. Muffins
Okay.
are also another very popular item to bring to the fair. So like cookies, I see there's 3 on the plate. Is that what we should?
Yes, we want 3 muffins, and we would prefer muffins that are nice and brown on the bottom and not too dark. And these are just perfect. And I think we have some muffins that aren't just perfect, but anyway, the judge will cut in 2. And what they're going to look for is the tunnels. These, have just a few tunnels. And that might mean over mixing. Your muffins need to be mixed just barely so that your flour doesn't show. And if it's over mixed, why it's gonna go ahead and peak even more than this probably. And then also we want your muffins not in a cupcake wrapper. So, and then there is a little bit of a fry area right here, which maybe, I think we've got some with more. Here we go. Good example. This is called a fry ring, fry line. And that is too much shortening around your muffin cup in your muffin pan. So you want to just put your shortening around the bottom and then just bring it up, but use a paper towel or something to wipe the excess off, and then you won't have your fry ring.
Now, Sue, could I use liners when I bake them at home, and then when I package them, just remove the liner? Is that okay?
It's okay, but you're going to lose some of your, because when you use the muffin tin, why it's going to adhere and have a better edge than using the cupcake paper, because it's going to pull off, and you're not going to see really what it looks like, the true muffin,
Right.
which I think a judge might count down. I don't know. Every judge is different.
Every judge is different. That is true, and we'll kind of keep touching upon that throughout. But this does mark kind of maybe a more technically advanced
Yes.
baker,
Uh-huh.
as if they can bake the muffins without the liners.
Yes.
Very
Yes.
good. All right.
And the judges are looking for consistency between all three of the items.
Yes.
What are they looking at?
They're looking at the bottom, and they're looking at the, okay, this is show, this is presentation, this is fair. So you want to go with the very best, not what you would feed your dad or your mom or your grandma. You save that, for the imperfections. But this one might look, if they get really, really down to the champion, they're going to say, okay, I see one blueberry here, one there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 there. Okay, maybe not, a purple ribbon, and especially with the tunnel. So this one might be a blue. So,
Yeah.
Any questions?
No, but you're absolutely right. The judges will, when they get down to deciding champions, they'll get super, super picky and begin counting the berries, begin counting. They have rulers. They'll be measuring everything. So it does get a little tense.
It does, it does.
All right. Very good. Hey, brownies. These are gorgeous brownies.
They are.
So what makes a great brownie for the fair?
Oh, 1 second before we run into the move on to brownies. How can the 4-Hers avoid the tunnels? I think you mentioned it slightly, but if you could expand upon it a little bit more.
Okay, just don't mix it up very much. When you put put all of your ingredients in, well, I just use a spoon to incorporate it and to mix it up. And just when you don't see any flour, even at the bottom of your bowl, I just put them in your tins. And that's the same thing with your nut breads also, to keep, because muffins and nut breads are about the same as far as mixing.
Or quick breads?
Quick breads.
Yeah.
Yes.
Great, thank you.
Why don't we touch on quick breads now? Because they do share a lot of similarities. So sorry, Super. Switcheroo.
Right, no problem.
So we've got 2 quick breads to look at here. So that one.
That one's yeast bread.
Oh, that's a yeast bread. My bad. We've got 1 bread to look at here. So this is a banana bread.
Okay, this is a banana bread, and it's a little dark, and it was baked in a glass pan. And if you bake in a glass pan, remember to reduce your temperature of your oven. And it's really, really good if you have a thermometer in your oven. That way you know right exactly where you are. Another thing that I learned a long time ago is if you have a thermometer, you can put it in your bread, and about 190 degrees is when it's done. And quick breads are very, very hard to get done. And if it's on a rainy day, they're going to be really hard because right in through here, they're not going to be done. So, and it's moisture in the air, I guess.
Yeah.
So anyway, the judge is going to look at this and they're going to look at that. And on this particular one, you see a dark area. And this was bananas. So that maybe that banana wasn't mashed up enough. I don't know.
Yeah.
You never know. And the judge always finds something. And so they usually go down through the middle. And this is what we're going to find on this. I would say that we've got two textures here, two colors, and maybe the bottom of the oven is hotter than the top. Maybe, I don't know, but there are a few holes. And it was done in a glass pan, so maybe that's, you know, an issue too with that. It is done right here, little dark here, fry line here. So anyway, and then the banana right here. Any questions?
So I have a question for Kathy. Did you bake this in a convection oven?
Just a regular oven.
Just regular oven. So maybe if you have a convection feature, that might help circulate the air a little bit better, so you get even cooking and browning.
Yes.
All around the loaf.
Right. Right. Any questions on that?
Not at this time.
Okay.
All right, let's look at this thing, because this is not a paper plate.
No.
This looks like some kind of a contraption you make. So, well, how do you make this, Sue?
Okay, inside here, there's cardboard. So you just have a piece of cardboard that fits your product. Remember to put your label on the bottom and then cover it with foil. And that's very acceptable at the fair.
Okay, great.
That's good.
Excellent. Yeah.
We did have a question come in. Can we bake in a mini loaf pan?
Oh, great.
Yes.
But would that be similar to so mini loaf pan? But do you want to bring in your like foil pan
No,
into the, so like muffin liners, they need to be out.
that needs to be out.
Okay.
It's going to display your product a lot better to the judge. And we're looking, you know, for presentation.
Thank
Like
you.
The real estate location.
Oh, yes, on the top of your nut bread or quick breads, you're going to have a crack. And that happens when the air escapes. And sometimes you can use foil around here if you don't want things to get as dark around your nut breads. Because they bake for like 60 minutes or so.
No, that's a good point. Yeah, foil is a great trick, even for pie crusts,
Yes.
to avoid getting that edge of the ring too dark. You can do a foil liner. Right. So, but is the crack, is that bad?
Crack's good.
Crack is good. All right. For breads, for me.
For breads.
Right. Okay, very good. All right. Let's go back to the brownies.
Brownies? Brownies are an all-time favorite. A lot of families like brownies. Brownies are in right now. And these three brownies are consistent, and they were measured with a tape measure, I'm sure, or a ruler. And so they're exactly the same all the way around. And the plate is just perfect for that, for these three brownies. And one thing the judge is probably going to look for is the doneness. They're going to smell and they're going to taste. And then see if they're dry or if they're moist or whatever. And so there's cake brownies and then there's fudge brownies. And so it just depends on which you like. So brownies are a good thing, especially for beginner 4-Hers. Any questions?
So I don't see any edges. So I know that's my favorite part of the brownie is the edge. I mean, I'm gonna give the judge the best part. So can I just give her an edge or?
Let's don't.
Okay. So just center pieces.
Yes.
Okay,
yes,
yeah.
Yes.
All right, very good.
Yes.
Very good. Okay, excellent. What about cream cheese swirl brownies?
Oh my, let's leave cream cheese out of the 2021 fair altogether.
Yeah.
Don't even go there. Let's just don't. Just because there's so many rules and there's so many recipes out there with cream cheese that we've just at the fair just decided to not do cream cheese, just for everybody's welfare.
Can you explain why cream cheese is not allowed?
Sure. So all of your fair entries should not be perishable unless you're entering them into a category like exhibit and go that accepts perishable items. However, be mindful that no perishable item, including any exhibit and go item, is allowed at state fair. And the reason why we don't want any perishable items is because we want food safe items. So we need things that are shelf stable and perishable. They're not shelf stable. They need to be refrigerated to keep the product safe. Cream cheese is extremely perishable because it's extremely moist. It's a dairy product, which has to be refrigerated. So there's a lot of issues with it that it's delicious. I love it. I'm a cream cheese fan, but we want to make sure everything is safe for the judge. And we want to make sure that it's a qualified entry because it will be disqualified at local and especially at state level if products have it.
I think this is an area that the families are really interested in. We did have a few questions come in. Let me go ahead and navigate to that. The first question is, are there any other ingredients that we should avoid?
Yeah, there's a lot, there's a list, and we'll cover all of those in the food safety presentation that we'll get to in a few minutes, so please stick around for that. We do have a form that we created, the ladies and I created, that we're gonna send out to all of the 4-H families who enter foods products, that kind of have resources of what is and isn't allowed. And then also your fair book. I know it's like tiny font, but it will show everything that is acceptable and is not acceptable. But the baseline is if you have to put it in the refrigerator, don't bring it to fair. So.
And for our 4-H families, the fair book is in the final stages of production, so it should be available in the next few weeks.
And if you've got questions, if you're making a product or doing your recipe research and you're just kind of confused or not sure, always ask. It's always better to ask than be turned away at the fair. We don't want to do that to anybody, but we also have to be in compliance with the rules. All right. We'll continue this day. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Second question is, fresh fruit is out also, but if it's baked, does it make it okay?
So yes, if it is baked inside, like blueberry muffins. So if it's baked into the product, then it is safe. But if it is like a fruit garnish, not acceptable. Some pies are not acceptable because they're not like strawberry pie, fresh strawberry pie would not be acceptable. Some custard pies, not acceptable. Again, because those are all refrigeration required items.
And you mentioned
pecan pies. So pecan pies are okay because there's so much sugar in them. And sugar is a stabilizing ingredient that helps ward off bacteria. Bacteria just doesn't like sugar. Just maybe why we love it so much.
And you mentioned some pies. What about meringue topped pies?
So we also want to stay away from anything that involves raw egg product. And some meringues are cooked thoroughly, some are not. So honestly, there's just too much of a wiggle room between properly cooked meringue and not properly cooked meringue that they are just not allowed as well. So we just want to stay away from meringue tops. And also ganache. Ganache is delicious. I love ganache. But there's just way too much milk. And again, milk is a highly perishable item. Or cream, it's cream. It's just too perishable. Too much moisture. Bacteria love moisture. And so, yeah, there's a lot of sugar in ganache, but the moisture outweighs the sugar factor. So no ganache, no meringue, no fresh fruit.
Great.
No cream cheese. No cream cheese.
All right. I think we are all good with questions.
Okay. All right. Keep them coming. This is great. So very popular cream cheese topped product, the cinnamon rolls.
Oh, yes.
So let's,
My favorite.
We've got some cinnamon rolls. And these are gorgeous.
I love cinnamon rolls. I love bread.
There's more than 3 on there, though.
I grew up on.
I was gonna ask too. Good eye. So yes, so there's what is it? 6? No, 7 cinnamon rolls.
Okay, number 1, we just need 3. And so that's all you need, but this is a very nice plate and for beauty that might be given to grandma. But if you want to put frosting on, you can either use a canned frosting or you can use a buttercream frosting. And you can get a buttercream frosting recipe on internet, any place. And of course, you'll go ahead and put it in your bag, and you put your name underneath, just like the rest of your things. And this is not needed. The
Paper lining.
paper liner, that's not needed. But it does help with presentation, doesn't it?
Very pretty.
So, and I would say for cinnamon rolls, make sure this, if I'm looking at it for Grand Champion, I'm gonna look to see, like right here, the cinnamon might have come out and it may not have been a properly mixed, in the roll before it was cut. And so, but then again, you might want to cover that up with icing and the judge may not even catch that. But, it's just, whatever your preference is. Another thing they're going to do is look at the roll on the bottom to see how it is. And these are all 3 rolled very nicely, nice and brown. And that one might be, if that was one of your 3 picks, that might, you might put that one back and choose another one because it's kind of got some crumbs there. Any questions on this?
What happens if a 4-H'er brings more than the 3 that they're allotted?
They'll probably catch it at the front desk.
Or not.
Or the judge might have a helper and say, can we have your extra? Oh, they try to make it fun for
Mhm.
everybody.
But they do want to stick to the correct number.
Yes,
Yep.
yes.
3 is best. It actually looks better on a plate. Like this is beautiful. But 3, I mean, I just feel like 3 is best because that's the judge's mindset. You might have some judges that are really rule sticklers than others, and they'll mark it down just because it's not following the rules. Some others might be a little bit more lenient.
Right.
But it's best to kind of go point by point and make sure everything is ticking the boxes, clicking the boxes with the rules.
Right.
So you won't be disqualified, but you might get a ribbon drop down just depending on your judge.
And this particular plate is a plastic one and probably not a good idea. You need to probably just have a cardboard, cut it out and use foil. That's what I would do instead of using a plastic plate.
Now, why don't you want to use plastic?
Because the fair book says
Very good.
to go ahead and put it on cardboard.
Okay.
And, you may not get this back if you want it back. We don't know exactly what's going to happen this year at fair.
Right. And just to kind of on that point where we keep hinting, we're not sure what's going to happen. You might get it back, and that's because we're really working very hard to have conference judging again. So it just depends on where our final location will be. Right now, that could be in 3 different places, we've got 3 different options that we're looking at. And so all of that is dependent on whether we do conference judging or not. So let's stay tuned. As soon as we know, we'll share that information with you all as well. So,
Perfect.
yes, all right. I just want to touch a little bit on why commercial frostings are okay. They're commercially produced to have a bunch of preservatives in them, also a bunch of sugar. So maybe not the healthiest options, but they are safe products because of those added preservatives that aren't necessarily consumer available. And the buttercream frosting, the reason why this is okay is because just like sugar, bacteria doesn't like sugar, bacteria also doesn't like fat. And butter, 80% of it is fat. So it's going to be a safer product, but also a lot of buttercream recipes will have you add a bunch of milk. What we typically look for, and another reason we want you to add your recipe is you don't want about 4 tablespoons is the max for milk in your icing recipes. So you want very minimal milk added because again, milk is that perishable ingredient that will make your product unstick.
Okay. And another thing, if you want to go one step further with your cinnamon rolls, you could go ahead and put your icing on. And then if you want to add pecans or something, well, just place them as strategic places for show. And that would be going one more step towards presentation.
So pecans, so Sue, that is an allergen in the food world. Do we have to worry about any allergens or allergies
Okay,
allergies.
from the 4-Hers point, no, from the judge's point, I mean, I'm sure she would share.
Right, yes.
And so, but I encourage the 4-Hers, if they do have allergies, to bring things, in their food group area that they are not allergic to.
Yes.
And explain that to the judges if it's in conference judging.
Yes, yeah. And we've had some fantastic products that were allergen minded. Like I think even one of our grand champions was a gluten-free chiffon cake, which was amazing. It was amazing. So not only does it really kind of showcase, it just showcases your skill and your ability to kind of supersede that limitation or avoidance and still be a great baker. But do be mindful if you are very sensitive to allergies, and we are doing conference judging, that it is not an allergen-free zone. So please be mindful of that. But we don't have any specific rules that apply to allergies. All right.
You brought up gluten-free. Are gluten-free items judged alongside the gluten products, or is it a separate entry area?
They are judged alongside the other products. So, and sometimes
That's good sometimes.
sometimes that's good. Sometimes it's interesting.
Yes.
All right. So speaking of gluten, yeast breads. And then we got another one there.
Is this it?
You can judge them both.
Okay, this is what,
It's onion batter bread.
okay, and so it's
It's
not
got
yeast.
yeast in it.
It does have yeast?
Yes.
Okay, this bread is shaped a little bit different, and it does have some areas right here that it may have been shaped a little.
Well, it's a batter, so you pour it in.
So you pour it in, right? Okay, got it. And so this is probably why you have the top like this. So let's cut into this and see. It smells wonderful. Again, if you want to test to see if bread is done, 190 degrees to 200 degrees is the secret.
And you will not be counted down from a thermometer hole. So-
Correct.
So don't
I
worry
hope
about
not.
that. Right,
Yes,
yeah.
exactly. Okay, now this is the inside, and we're seeing a dark line right here, and it's real tender on the inside. There is a little bit of a hole right there. And so maybe when you put the batter into the pan, you might take a knife and just kind of go through your batter a little bit so that these won't pop up. So anything else?
Oh, that's pretty good to me.
Maybe glass pan? Okay, remember your glass pans to turn your oven down a little bit. And this is another practice area, before fair, is to use your glass pans, and if they turn out real dark, why, see how far you want to turn your oven down.
So that's a good point. So how much should I practice?
Well, you know what? I think, I mean, when I've judged foods before, they've always never practiced, okay? And you could tell. So if you really want to do good at the fair, practice. And and it's funny because there's a lot of people out there that would enjoy your products. And I think bake and take is my theme for my house, because I bake bread a lot and I don't want to eat the whole recipe, so I take it out. And so if somebody drives in our yard and they leave their vehicle unlocked, they've got bread or pies or whatever. That's my secret. Bake and take.
Very good. I love that.
And do you know if many 4-Hers bake the morning of the judging, or do they prepare ahead of time?
Both ways. Both ways. But if you freeze, you got to know how to bring it out of the freezer and unthaw it. And yes, there's lots of stories.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen poor families come in with product that is still piping hot, but things are just melting away and they're in tears. So, I mean, it's risky. I mean, certainly you do want like the freshest experience for your product, but it's a little bit of a gray area, fuzzy area. So,
And if you have a lot of 4-Hers in your family, that oven's going to be going for 24 hours. Either that or go to grandma's house. Half of you bake there and half at your house.
and then something else that actually Molly Maddie suggested is make sure that when you're deciding what to enter into the fair, that it's a recipe you enjoy cooking, because that will certainly come through. That will help you practice it, so you can begin to perfect it because you care about it. So bake what you love. That's really gonna, and then within that, find what you're really great at. So bake what you love, make it great, and then you'll do well at the fair.
Right. And I always tell the kids that I have in my project, in my foods project, is a lot of times, like if you get a red ribbon or something like that at the fair, that's okay. Because it's not about the ribbon in 20 years, it's about what you learned that day that you're going to remember. It's not going to be the ribbon. And it's kind of hard to tell 4-Hers that, because they want, the purples, they want to go to state, they want top notch everything, but it's what you learn in 20 that you'll, and maybe teach somebody else down the line too. So anyway.
Thank you for that.
All right. How is this one?
It's the same thing. It's just,
You were just,
I just brought it for judging, sort of.
okay, all right. Purple ribbon. All right.
We do have a question about baking with gluten-free flour. Do you have any tips for success?
It is at all, so there's a couple things. So you can either make your own gluten-free flour blend, and that is recommended. There are a lot of gluten-free flours out there, like there's almond flour, there's brown rice flour, but one variety of gluten-free flour is not going to be substantial enough to have a finished baked product, because it's just going to lack the properties that white or all-purpose flour has. So what you need to do is make a blend of those flours. Definitely recommend, there's a lot of great recipes out there to make your own blend. And there's also a lot of good companies, baking companies, like there's King Arthur Flour, there's, can't think of Gold Medal. They have their own gluten-free flour blends that is already pre-mixed. And it is a one-to-one, swap. But they are all different. All recipes for the blends, even for the commercials, commercial companies, they have their own ratio. And those ratios work for some recipes and not for other recipes. So for gluten-free, you definitely got to practice. And then also you probably do want to not make that product too far ahead, because it will dry out. It's just, the gluten-free flours don't hold moisture very well. So that's why they have a reputation of being very dry and crumbly. So making sure that you compensate for that.
Great, thank you.
All right,
What's next?
rolls.
Yay.
These are pretty.
Yes, they are. Okay, again, we've got 3 on a plate. This is good. We're going to turn them over. Ooh, they smell wonderful. We're going to turn them over and check the bottoms, and we see we have one a little darker, and then this next and this. And the judge may check that out and count down a little bit. I don't know, it just depends. But it looks like they're rolled nicely, and they've got the same amount of, roll coming across here, and it looks pretty uniform to me. And then she's going to open it up for heat.
Yes.
And they're going to check this out. And one thing that they're going to see maybe here is the way it was rolled. And they may count down on that a little bit. They're going to look at the crumb and check that out. And you have anything else to say about that?
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing that I would identify. Right.
But very nice, good technique. And you don't see this very often. So if somebody likes to make rolls, go for this kind, or something that you don't see all the time.
Yeah. One thing too, because I would say that, would you say this is a fairly advanced recipe?
Yes.
Okay. So that is one of the things that I hear the judges talk a lot about, and that we work with judges to help them understand, is that you might be a senior in 4-H, in the senior class, but this might be your first or second year in 4-H. So don't be intimidated if you aren't up to this level. We're working with judges to make them understand that, you know, some people are just an older beginner, and that's okay. So make sure that when we do that conference judging, hopefully if we're able to, that comes out. You know, because they're going to ask you questions. You definitely want to know your recipe, understand your recipe. And then also the judge wants to kind of get to know you and your experience with making this. And so if you are an older beginner, just kind of work that in, that, you know, this is my first year in foods. And so I'm just really starting out.
Very good, very good.
All right. But I would say if this is your 10th year in foods, doing a trail mix baggie is probably not going to impress the judge. They're going to want something a little bit more advanced. So. Okay, scones.
Scones. If you have a bed and breakfast sometime in your lifetime, scones. Serve this. Again,
Nice.
Again, we're gonna look at the bottom and pie-shaped wedges. Everybody's gonna like that. The judges are gonna like that. Evenly browned. And then they're gonna, you know, cut into it. And scone is a typical breakfast, I think, bread.
And actually, these would be entered in the biscuit class.
Okay.
We don't have a specific scone class, so these would be put into the
Perfect.
biscuit category.
Perfect. And another thing, if they're gonna go for champions, they're gonna go for, you know, they're gonna look to see, you know, how everything is displaced or, you know, in place as far as the scone is. And then they might look for flakiness also. But anyway, that's a good fun thing to play with too. Any questions on that?
We're good.
Awesome. Very good. All right. So before we get to gift basket time, let's talk about food preservation. So not a very popular entry for Johnson County, but it could be. I think our biggest issue has been recipes and making sure that they are qualified recipes. And what is a qualified recipe? Well, that's a recipe that comes from the USDA or any ball resource, so a ball blue book or the ball website, which is freshpreserving.com, but it has to be recent. So I would say within the last 10 years is always a good safe margin. What would not be a qualified recipe is a recipe that comes from a family member that's been passed down from generations. We cannot accept those things from magazines, Pinterest. So we can't accept those again because we want to, as an extension agent, when we teach our classes, that is the only thing we recommend is that when you are preserving, that you use research-based, credible recipes for safety that have been researched for safety. So very important, absolutely important at the state level. You will be disqualified if a product gets through that is not from an approved source. So
Altitude.
altitude, very good, yes.
Our righteous will never forget that. Altitude.
Altitude, very important. Do you want to explain?
Go ahead.
So as we get higher in altitude, the air gets thinner, which means that temperature boils at a lower level. And so that's really important. Temperature, heat is what kills bacteria. So if you're not reaching 212 degrees because you can't get to 212 degrees because your air won't allow it to get to that high level, you have to adjust your recipe. And there's sources out there for that. There's also formulas for pressure canning to adjust for altitude. So very important. If you got questions about that, please contact me, contact us. We'll get those answered for you. And then you do also have to make that notification on your recipe that you did adjust for altitude. And it's about 2,000 is kind of the limit. Well, it just depends, but it's usually around 2,000. And Kansas, we think it's flat. But it is definitely, we have some, or I'm sorry, it's over 1,000.
Yeah, 1,000.
1,000.
Gardner was 1,000.
Yeah, so in here, Olathe, it's like this location, I think it's 1068. So we still adjust for altitude. So be mindful of that. All right, but if I've got a great recipe and it's from a credible source and I've adjusted for my altitude, how do I make sure that it's
Okay,
good product?
if you're grand champion, okay, we want a ball lid, a ball jar. And in one of the fairs I judged, it was really close. So they decided that whichever one matched up was going to be the champion. So match them up and be sure and date them too, you know, just for your own experience for at home. So you don't use your products 3 years later.
And I've got a silver flat and a gold ring.
Oh, that's not good.
That's not good? Why
Not for
not?
presentation.
So you want the colors to match.
Yes, you do. Yes, we do.
Very good.
And do these get tasted?
No, they do not. We do not taste preserved items. They are judged truly on presentation and recipe alone. And 4-H knowledge.
Yes, yes. And another thing on the rings, make sure there's no rust. There's a little bit of rust on this one. So you want new, you want presentation, the best of the best for fair.
Are you going to be looking at the consistency inside at all?
Oh, yes.
I will say that Karen Blakesley, who judges this category at State Fair, she's not a fan of fussy filling. So what is fussy filling? So that's if you're doing green beans, that's like lining your green beans up like soldiers. She's not a fan of that. For her, it really is all about safety. So don't worry too much about the fussy filling or fussy cutting. Just make sure that your recipe is safe. And it's an easy category to get a purple in. It really is just about making sure your flat and your ring match and your product is a safe one.
And then also headspace.
And headspace. Yes, well, if they're following their recipe.
Yes, exactly.
So headspace, that's the zone of nothingness between the food and the top of the flat. It's that air zone. And that's very important for sealing and ensuring that your product is preserved properly. And your recipe should indicate how much headspace is required, and it should match. It should match the product. All right.
Crystal,
Yes, ma'am.
canning label on the front.
And the canning label.
That.
So this one, so these labels are a little bit different than the baked item labels or the other food entry labels. It's a food preserving label because it's going to ask you some different questions. It's going to ask for processing time, what kind of processing, water bath or pressure. So make sure that when you're entering products for food preservation, that you're using a food preservation label. Yeah.
Crystal and Sue, we haven't seen cupcakes today. So are they a food project entry or does that fit under cake decorating?
Well, it could, just like cakes, could be either or, so could cupcakes. I would say cake decorating is one of those presentation only judged items. It's not sampled for flavor. So if you've got a delicious cupcake recipe entered into, is there a cupcake class? Or is it would be the cake class?
I think there is a cupcake class.
I do have a fair book here, so let's see. There is a frosted cupcake class.
Okay, great. So entering that if you want to, learn how to be a fantastic cupcake maker. But if you want to be a cupcake decorator, then go to the cake decorator.
And we have a lot of entries in that.
We do. It's one of our popular categories. I always feel bad for our gorgeous cakes.
I know.
They look so fantastic the first day of judging, and then by the last day of fair, it's pretty sad affair.
That's right.
If I'm reading this correctly, frosted cupcakes are in the junior preparation division, but not in the other upper levels. Is that So
So then you're moving to layered cakes.
exactly. So the senior is bundt cake, layer cakes, angel food and stuff like that. So we say, go ahead and take a look at the fair book when it becomes available.
There you go. Always, yeah. Okay, gift basket. So another growing in popularity category.
Yes, and we want to see a lot of these at the fair this year. And we want to see a lot of creativity. And so we're going to show you a couple things that you might do. Pick a theme. I think that's most fun. Today we're going to use maybe a barbecue, just a tablecloth theme. So for presentation, we're just going to put napkins in here. You can do, whatever you want. You can go out to Pinterest for ideas on this. And if our theme is like a breakfast theme, we might want to put scones in. And you have to have 3 things that you've made yourselves. And cookies. Brownies, do we want brownies for breakfast? I do.
I'll
It's
take
chocolate.
it.
Okay, and we might add a bread to that too, if you want. Which might be, like a bread in a bag. Be sure to package everything in bags.
Oh, there's muffins down there.
For muffins?
Or
Oh,
muffins.
yes, here we go. Let's take out brownies and put in muffins.
Perfect.
So I see that you put ribbons on it, make them look nice. Is that
Yes.
something the judge will be looking for?
Presentation, yes, indeed. And then we might add something that we didn't make ourselves, and we might add like a jar of jelly to go with, your bread and a tea. Or for the coffee drinkers, we might add some Starbucks. Makes everybody happy. Like that, and then go ahead and then we would go ahead and display it tastefully, and then you will have to put it in a bag, and that might be a bag from the cleaners or something like that.
What about the stuff I make? Do I still need to include the recipes?
Oh yes, always include the recipes. Don't forget the recipes.
What
Okay.
if I want to do like a wine and cheese bread gift basket? How does that sound?
I'm thinking, okay, does wine go into the alcoholic area at the fair?
Wine I drink though.
I don't know.
So we definitely don't want any 4-H'er purchasing wine because it's illegal. So and therefore we don't want any entries for 4-H'ers to be alcoholic. So that's always a good point. So even in your recipes, some recipes include alcohol. A lot of baked goods include like rum or something else. A lot of pie dough recipes now include vodka. So we just don't want to see that, because as a minor, you should not be utilizing alcohol in any way, shape, or form. So no wine and cheese bread basket.
No.
Just a cheese bread basket.
There you go.
There you
There you go. That would be perfect. And then if you want to do a basket that's nutritional, you might do a trail mix. We'll take these out. We might do a trail mix. We might do apples in here tastefully. I'm just going to place them in.
And notice, sorry, Sue, these are whole fruits, not cut up fruits. Once they're cut up, they become perishable and needs refrigeration. So leave your fruits whole.
Right. And another thing I think that I might do is, if you're going for a champion, is maybe to take the stems out. Or maybe, that's up to your discretion. That's just something I saw. And you might add popcorn to that and brownies. We gotta go back to chocolate.
That's why I like you.
And then you can even add cookies to that if you want, because that would be your 3
things you've made.
things. And you can add, like tea if you want that. You could, whatever you like, add to your basket.
But make it pretty.
Yes.
Does
Yes.
it need to be a certain size?
18 by 18.
18 by 18 by 18 is
Inches.
the max.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
I think that's what the fair book says. Read the fair book.
And then there's a category in there for breakfast breads gift basket. So what is
Scones
so scones?
and biscuits and muffins and cinnamon rolls, my favorite. So,
All right.
Can I go ahead and ask some questions from our families? So, how many items in a basket? Is there a set number?
I know there are 3 things you've made is a number that you need to pay attention to. But beyond that,
okay.
It's at least 3,
okay.
so you could do.
So minimum of 3, and those, if you just go on 3, all things need to be homemade. More is okay.
Right.
And maybe better, because you want a good presentation.
Right.
All right.
And you know, if you have a summer theme, you might even add flowers, you know, some fresh flowers. I mean, that just came to me. So you guys do your own thing, but that's kind of what I would do if I was going to take a basket to somebody, is I might add some fresh flowers in there someplace. Especially if they're ill or if they're a friend and need a picker upper. That's maybe what I might do.
And are the items in this basket tasted, or is it just presentation?
I don't think it's tasted.
No.
Yeah, I don't think it's
so.
tasted.
And if a 4-H'er is interested in taking something to the project auction, not the food auction that happens on Thursday, but the project auction, how do they go about doing that? Because if something is cooked on Sunday, I'm guessing that's not what you want to give away or sell during the auction.
Rebate.
Yeah, for that, we always recommend to remake the product for that auction.
But you do get a lot of money for the baskets and things. That is a good thing that they started the project auction. I like that. So
Very good.
just because I get to see the food again. I like the animals too. But I get to see the food again.
And one last question, for now, the basket itself, does the 4-H'er get to take the basket home, or is it sold during the food auction? So this is the Thursday one.
So we usually don't sell the food baskets.
We try not to.
We try not to, because it's a lot, and some people do put those into the project auction.
Right.
Um,
And that's okay for that.
right.
But for the food auction, we try not to sell the baskets.
So for our newer 4-H families, can you explain the food auction? What is auction during the food auction?
So-
Usually.
May not happen this year, probably won't happen this year. But it's a fundraiser for 4-H foods. It helps supply the prizes that we give to our winners and raffles. Do you want to explain why it was started? Well, that's why it started, but kind of like how it works.
I think that's the best explanation is, you know, what we sell at the food auction, it comes back to the 4-H'ers in one form or another in education. And so, and I think they'll glean a lot, you know, from the education and from the gifts that we bring in from KitchenAid.
Right.
So, which are top of the line as far as I'm concerned, tools that they can use. And we'll start them off with the best, and then after they get off on their own, where they can do their own thing.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Speaking of which, for all of those who attended this session today, they are going to get a item from KitchenAid. So make sure that you stick around so I can write the names down.
But as to what is auctioned, so like when you say you're gonna bring in this loaf to be judged, and so what happens is the judge, they cut it open, they'll probably cut another slice, they'll taste that, and then you have all this loaf left over. So what we like to do is take the leftover, package it, and then put that into the auction. So that is what's being auctioned, is kind of like the leftover larger entries. Now what's displayed, so we have all of the food that gets entered into the fair, does go to the green building to be on display. So what is displayed? So with the judge cuts, you know, their piece to taste, they'll put that like on a separate little paper plate. And so that item, whatever's left over in addition to entry tag with a sticker showing ribbon placement. That is what it gets displayed. Okay. All right.
And I think the 4-Hers, they used to have, go around and see what their clubs have done. And so everything will be displayed in clubs.
Yes.
And so then when the clubs, when they have their tours, if they still do that on the fairgrounds, way they can go to that one area and see what their kiddos have done.
Yes. Yeah. The only things that aren't displayed within the clubs are kind of like your larger categories like cake decorating, food preservation. So very good. Yes. All right. I think, have we missed anything, Carrie? Hey, any other questions?
We do not have any questions from the families. I think we did a great job. It is 2:04 already,
Okay.
Sue.
My goodness.
Time passes quickly.
Very good. All right. Well, thank you, Sue. Thank you, Kathy. Thank you, Audrey. Thank you, family.
There, you do have a quick presentation as well,
I do,
correct?
yeah.
All right. So 4-H families, please hang on tight while I switch computers.
Can everybody? All right. Can everybody hear me okay? Great. All right. So the presentation I'm going to share with you today is just about food safety, really hits in on what is and isn't allowed at the fair and kind of the why, the background behind why it is and isn't allowed. So a lot of food safety, but hopefully, you know, we'll keep it interesting enough and not too dull. And then you will have access to these slides when the 4-H team sends out the handout that we created for everyone. There will be links on there, 2 links. One is to these slides, and then another link kind of showing how judges are trained and what to look for. It's a lot of different presentations, but it's great information. It's how our judges are trained and what to look for and what your 4-H'er will be asked upon the entries. Okay, so let's see if I can share my screen. Okay. So can everyone see that okay? It is a PDF of slides that were put together a couple years ago by Karen Blakesley. Again, she is kind of the head honcho for the state fair. She trains us agents on food safety and what to look for at local fairs. And so we rely on her guidance to help us with the 4-H fair and making sure that everything is in compliance. Okay, so we're just going to go through this. I'm going to skip a few just to kind of save you time. But why is food safety important? You know, we all eat, and we're all still here to talk about it. So does it really matter that much? Well, it does. We've definitely have known about historical outbreaks that have happened and have had really awful consequences. And the truth is, every time that you cook or bake in the kitchen, you are doing a science experiment, and not all recipes are appropriate for the fair. So we want to make sure that we are using appropriate, safe recipes. So how do you know? Well, you have to ask yourself, does this food require refrigeration? It's always a good point. Would you eat this food at room temperature? Will this product hold up to its standards when it's judged or displayed? You know, I mean, if we think about wedding cakes, you know, and how they just start to weep and just fall apart. So not only is that probably not a safe product, you know, especially if it's, you know, adorned with fresh fruit, but it doesn't look good. And we want things to kind of look good, taste good, and be safe. That's the things we're kind of aiming for at fair. Okay. And anything that kind of goes against these guidelines for food safety, we just can't accept. And I hate doing it. It's always an awful moment, but we just can't accept anything that goes against food safety guidelines. Okay.
All right, so what makes food unsafe? Well, there are 3 categories of hazards. There's a chemical, so cleaner. So you want to make sure that, you know, if you're cleaning, you're not cleaning next to your food. So, but any kind of chemical base, visible hazards, hair, probably not an eyeball, but toys, shavings of wood or tin that you open. So shavings of tin that kind of falls into the product, and biological. So these are the germs that cause disease. And they are our biggest risk that we're looking for. Certainly if we see a big hair in a food entry item, probably not going to accept it. But what we look for when you bring in your item is we check the recipe just to make sure there aren't any biological hazards, okay? So how does bacteria grow? I mean, what do these biological hazards need? What are the conditions that they need? Well, it's an acronym that we call FATCOM, and whenever I teach food safety classes, I always explain it like this. So bacteria, microorganisms, they're living creatures just like you, just like me. And what do we need to survive? That's what they also need to survive. So what do we need? We need food. We need neutral conditions, so nothing that's too acidic. We need time to grow, you know. We need comfortable temperatures, we need oxygen, and we need water. So bacteria, they need the same thing. They need a food item, they need neutral conditions, they need time to just live their lives. They need comfortable temperatures. So room temperature works for us, it works for them as well. Most bacteria need oxygen, and all bacteria needs water. So when we say things like, you know, sugar, bacteria doesn't like sugar, that's because sugar binds up moisture, that binds up water, so bacteria can't access it. Fat does the same thing. It kind of insulates the food so that bacteria can't access the food, access the water in it. Okay, so where does bacteria grow? So bacteria, yeast, molds, these are all different microorganisms that can cause food issues. They can grow on just about any food, but they really like carbohydrates and protein. So they really like baked items. So it's just about minimizing those other issues, making sure that the moisture is bound so that the bacteria can't get to it. So what foods spoil the quickest? So the ones that are of concern, so fruit, milk, cut vegetables, meat, egg, those are the foods that spoil the quickest. Okay, so what is perishable? Anything high in moisture, protein, and neutral acidity. So anything that needs refrigeration. Many fairs have a perishable foods class, Johnson County's, that's Exhibit and Go. So actually the judges love Exhibit and Go because it's just a break from all the sweets. So we've had like ribs come in, it's great. So if you really wanna try and learn and get good feedback about perishable items, that is an opportunity. But just know it cannot go on to the state to be judged. Okay. So what is not acceptable? So this is, you know, the black and white, what's not acceptable. So icings and frostings made with raw eggs, cream cheese frosting, chocolate ganache, frosting with a lot of heavy cream, and lemon curd. So not acceptable. And again, you'll get access to these slides with this listed on there as well. So fresh fruit or vegetables as garnish. I've seen amazing cornbread muffins, like jalapeno cornbread muffins come in, and the jalapenos baked into the cornbread. That's totally fine. But then there's a sliced fresh jalapeno garnish on top. We had to have them be removed because that's a perishable item. I know it's picky, but again, with fair, it's all about kind of like the best of the best and the safest of the safest. So just be mindful that once a fruit is cut, it must be refrigerated. So like those whole apples in Sue's gift basket, that's okay. Just don't want sliced apples. You want to leave the grapes on the stems, don't want to remove them because you're exposing the food that bacteria need. You're exposing it to the atmosphere and then bacteria can get in there. Some fruits are just no-go. So strawberries, raspberries, those are just berries in general, super highly perishable. Once they're baked into things, okay, but just out in the open, they're just a no-go. Okay. And then many vegetables need refrigeration after harvest, peppers. So what I like to tell folks is if you're at a grocery store and you're not sure whether to refrigerate the produce or not, think about where you purchased it at the grocery store in the produce section. So if you noticed, you've got some bins in the center aisle that are without refrigeration, and then there are cases that are refrigerated. So the items that are in the middle without refrigeration, those items do not need to be refrigerated unless, of course, you cut them open, then they absolutely need to go back into the fridge. But if you're buying items from the refrigerated case, those are probably more perishable items and should be kept refrigerated and probably avoided for fair entries. Okay. Also fillings. So fillings with any high amount of dairy. So cream cheese fillings, sour cream, ricotta fillings, where they're not really baked into the product. They're just kind of existing on their own. Not acceptable just because it's just too high moisture. Okay. Also things not acceptable, custard pies like pumpkin, cheesecake, cream or meringue based pies, coconut cream, chocolate cream, lemon cream, or in lemon meringue, any flavor, probably not a good idea to enter. Strawberry pie, chiffon pie, just because, again, these are using perishable ingredients like eggs and a lot of dairy. Okay, I haven't seen this. This was pretty popular a few years ago, but baking in jars, just not allowed because it's not a safe practice. It's just those jars are not meant for dry heat. They're meant for wet environments, wet, hot environments. And then also it could create a seal, which produces an anaerobic environment. So that's no oxygen, which you would think, well, bacteria, pathogens, they need oxygen to survive. Some don't like any oxygen. And one of those is one of the most deadly pathogens, which is the botulinum, Clostridium botulinum pathogen bacteria. Does not like any oxygen, but it's very, very dangerous. Okay, baking in brown paper bags from the grocery store. I haven't seen this very often or at all, but again, not a safe practice. It could cause a fire. Those bags are not sanitary. So just, and then it too, the ink and the glue and the materials used to create those bags could produce toxic fumes, so not a good idea to use that. And then, of course, we touched on alcohol. Just avoid alcohol in your recipes. Cooking in clay flower pots. Again, these products are not meant for cooking. They're not food grade. You can use ceramic food grade glazed pots, but they must be labeled food grade. And most flower pots are not. Okay, friendship bread starters. If the starter has been fermented in the refrigerator, that's okay. But if it was not, and it seems like most of them aren't, that's not acceptable. Okay. All right, and then meat. I love bacon, but we just can't accept it at the fair because it's a perishable product. So let's just leave the meat out of our fair entries unless it's an exhibit and go. Okay, flavored oils. So herbs, vegetables, and garlic just kind of put into oils, olive oils will not be acceptable. Where might you see this? Well, in a gift basket, for instance, you want to put any fresh herbs or cloves of garlic into oil. It's just not as safe. It makes that food unsafe. Okay. And there's an explanation here, a publication that you can click on and read more about why that is. All right, so what is acceptable? We've gone through all the no's. Let's hear some yeses. So dairy products that are incorporated into the batter and not a separate, filling layer. I will probably forget about cream cheese. We just don't want to see cream cheese at the fair. But if you use like sour cream in a quick bread or cream in a cake batter or in scones, but then if it's a baked final product, that is totally acceptable because you're drying it out by baking it getting rid of that excess moisture. Okay, eggs, you need to crack some eggs when you make cookies and muffins and all that good stuff. So eggs are very perishable, but again, when you bake it, it becomes safe. It becomes a thoroughly cooked, shelf-stable product. Egg wash on your pies and breads, that's okay, because again, you're baking it and making it safe. If you want to create like an icing that calls for egg whites, you can use an egg white powder. There's meringue powder. That's a safe swap for egg whites. Okay. All right, fruit baked into a product. So we talked about blueberry muffins, but also pineapple upside down cakes. You're baking the fruit into the item. It's not exposed and perishable. Okay. So most fruit pies are okay, except for the strawberry pie, because there's so much sugar in there. And again, sugar kind of binds up moisture, makes it unavailable to pathogens, and reduces issues that way. Pecan or any nut pie, same situation, that high sugar level is going to bind up moisture, making it unavailable for bacteria to use. Okay. Frostings and icings, most of them have that high sugar content or high butter content. You just want to watch your liquid additions. So your milk, your juice, your water, no more than 4 tablespoons for your typical recipe, like 2-layer cake recipe for frostings. You can add flavorings. That's totally allowed. So you can add a cream cheese flavor. You can add a fruit flavor. Those are alcohol based, but they're at such low levels. And vanilla is an alcohol based product, but it's not alcohol and it's not limited to 21 or above. So if it's available to minors, then it's an acceptable product. Okay. All right. German chocolate frosting, that is fine. Commercial-based frostings are fine as well. Okay, cheese needs to be refrigerated, but if you mix it into the batter, that will be fine. Hard cheeses get the A+ for food safety because they don't have as much moisture as other cheeses do. So what's a hard cheese? Well, that'd be like your cheddar would be a hard cheese. But you can also use cottage cheese, ricotta cheese. Forget about the cream cheese. But as long as it's baked into the product, that would be okay. Okay. What you don't want is cheese as a garnish. So again, just like the slice of jalapeno on top, you just don't want any shredded cheese to be garnishing the top of the product. You need it to be thoroughly incorporated and cooked into the product. Okay. All right. And then Karen has gone through some like problem products in the fair. I'll let you kind of look through those slides just to kind of get a better idea of what she has seen. Those are items that she has actually witnessed that have been brought into the state fair. And then here is a list of temperatures. So Sue kind of alluded to this. Temping your baked product is a great way to ensure that it's done. Forget about the toothpick test. Temperature is where it's at. So this lets you know all of the temperatures for baked products. Okay. And then thinking about nutrition is always a good thing and something that if you can kind of bring to the fair and talk about in the conference interview about maybe why you chose some products because of a nutrition factor, that judges always like to hear that. Okay. And then watch your portion size. Bigger is not always better. You want to make sure that it's presented properly. These are the recommended sizes. So bar cookies, 2-inch, drop cookies, 2 half-dollar coins. So let you kind of look that over as well. Modified foods. We don't have I don't think we have a modified foods class in Johnson County. I know some counties do, but I don't think we do. You can modify the recipe. Just make sure that it's written down. You want to absolutely make sure that the recipe you make is what you what is documented on your product. What you can do is, in the source, you could say adapted from America's Test Kitchen or wherever it is. But if you modify a recipe, you certainly want to have the actual recipe that you truly made attached to your product. Okay.
Crystal?
So
Crystal?
again, just practice, practice, practice. Lots of opportunities to enter some great products. Read the rules in your fair book. If you have questions, please let us know. Judge's Guidebook for Foods and Nutrition Exhibits is available. A link to all of those materials will be on the handout that we send out next week. And I think that's it. All right. Do you have any questions for me? Let's see, I'll open the chat. Give you a moment just to type in.
Crystal?
There's
Crystal,
Miss Nancy.
hey, there is a
Oh, I
modified,
can't hear you, Nancy.
I'll just chat it.
Oh, I hear you now.
There is a modified section because that's what Charlie does every year. That's what he always won at the state fair for. And it's a fabulous thing if you have a 4-H'er maybe that has already gone past some of the beginning things. And so he's really into science and experimenting, and that's what that modified recipe project really has been really good for my son.
Awesome. Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, well, if not, and something comes up later, just send us an email. I don't know if I put my email, but Ami, please share with the families my email, and we'll definitely kind of reach back out to you if you've got questions. We want this to be a wonderful experience for you. Fair is great. I'm always amazed at the talent that comes through. It's wonderful to see people try and learn. So let us know how we can help. We'll do the best we can to kind of support this process. All right. Okay, I'll hand it back over to Ami.
All right, can we all give a virtual hand applause or reaction to say thank you to our volunteers, Kathy and Sue and Crystal. Yay. We're gonna wrap it up with a giveaway. These KitchenAid items were donated by the Master Food volunteers.